Appreciate you streaming in here on Birds 365. It's the NFL summer. Calendar summer comes up later this week, but it's downtime in the NFL. So we like to talk about what's going around the entire league and get a local slant from a guy who's outside the mix, not necessarily here every single day, not part of the 100 minutes that John had to watch the Eagles practice
100 minutes
during this spring.
Jason, not like the old days.
That's all they allowed for.
Yeah. We only had 2 open OTAs. It sounds like there's something wrong with your mic. We only had 2 open. The Eagles didn't do mandatory minicamp, and there were 2 open OTAs to reporters. That's it. So they did much more work, but that was all that was open to us.
Add less than 2 hours if you watch.
Yeah, Jason, see if you can adjust your mic a little bit because we can just barely hear you.
Can you guys hear me better?
Now we got great.
You. Now we got you.
Usually, it's the headphones usually work great. So I don't know what happened there. So, I just don't understand coaches who care that much about.
I know.
By the way, is it Black T-shirt day for all of us?
Yes.
Well, we got the green screen, so I always got to go dark. Although mine's maroon. I don't know if you can tell. So not quite.
A little bit now from how I'm looking at it. It looks almost black, but yeah, maroon I can see. So, anyways, I don't understand being protective of off-season practices. I don't understand coaches. I don't understand what they're thinking.
I don't understand either.
I mean, they're going to war for stuff that is absolutely meaningless, and it's it's like going into war over like install practices. It's just nothing. Yeah, but okay.
By the way, Jason, it's not like they're in there practicing for hours and they let John and all the other beat guys in for 10 minutes to go get the hell out. Oh no, they're not even going through the drills. They do less than any other team in the National Football League. And last year they had less injuries than almost any other team. And oh, by the way, they went to the Super Bowl. So you can't even second guess their less is more attitude. Is everybody in the National Football League going to follow the Eagles' lead and say, yeah, why should we put our players at risk? Let's do less activities. Let's spend that much more time.
There is something to be said for that. I mean, there are a couple of caveats that go with it. You better have a really veteran team. You better have really veteran leadership that forces your entire team to show up in shape on time. So you better have guys like Brandon Graham. You better have guys like Fletcher Cox. You better have intense, directed, and focused guys on offense, like Jalen Hurts, okay, who have that kind of leadership quality. So you can get away with it, right, if you have the right mix of people, and that's okay. And I think there is something to be said for that. I think that there are coaches who go the other direction and overdo it in football and wear their guys out. That's absolutely true. But I am also a big believer that if you do that, your first part of your season, you're not going to be very good at certain technique-oriented stuff that needs work. Okay, like basic blocking and tackling. Okay, you're gonna suffer there a lot. They evidently did not. They were sharp last year, but I think that has to do with being a veteran team.
Jason, we're going to get into a lot of current stuff with you, but before I do that, I wanted to bring up Bob Brown because he passed away on Friday. And you're a Hall of Fame selector. And he, to me, may be the most underrated player in Eagles history. I don't know. Obviously, part of it is age. Newer fans aren't going to remember 1964. He only played 5 years here, 6 years. He was an All-Pro every year, either first or second team, and he seems forgotten in history. I remember John Madden called him the most aggressive offensive lineman in history. If you remember any conversations on Bob Brown, what did you guys?
Oh, there's a great story there's a great story about Bob Brown. The first time when he was playing, he played into the 70s, and played with Oakland for a period of time. I'm trying to remember, and he ended up playing against the Steelers one time.
Steelers, yeah, I heard this story.
Yeah, and basically, I think it's LC Greenwood is lined up against him, and he's giving LC a hell of a time. And Joe Green goes, oh, "Come on, I'll take him for a couple of plays." And Joe Green goes over there, and after one play, basically, Joe Green goes, "No, you can have him back." I mean, it's like Joe Green, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how aggressive Bob Brown was. So yeah, I mean, I think lost to history, lost to the fact that he played for multiple teams, never a champion, that kind of thing, or at least not a prominent member of a championship team kind of story. He's lost in that kind of I guess trivial part of the NFL.
Somebody told me that very story about Bob Brown this week with his passing. I'm
Yep.
glad that you put it out there for everybody as well, because
and Joe confirmed that, because I had let me say this: I only asked Joe that question on the phone. I didn't ask him that question.
Right, you don't necessarily want to
I
ask him
didn't want to piss off. Yeah, Joe, even in his advanced age, Joe's a big, mean man. So I didn't want to embarrass him that way.
Well understood. All right, National Football League issue again. It was something we talked about for a ton of shows in a row. It seemed like it's died down now, and it will pick up again. Amazon Thursdays. The Eagles get to play in the first one this year. Get it right out of the way, Minnesota, and then they don't have it again, unless, of course, they get flexed into it. It was a big topic of conversation. Should the NFL give them flex power as early? It's only a small window, and don't know how much say Fox and CBS are going to have over it. The NFL players really don't like Thursday night, but teams are going to get moved into it now on a less long-term notification basis. Yeah. Is this going to be a big story again when the season gets underway, the flexing of Thursday night Amazon games?
It'll be a big story in those weeks where it happens, because it's an unfair situation. It's ultimately bad for those teams. I think it produces bad football, and it's going to produce extremely bad football in that particular week. Like I think making teams play more than one Thursday night game, the potential of doing that in a season, is an almost reckless idea on the part of the commissioner. I just think it's just ridiculous. It's a bad idea. It's hard enough to do it when you actually schedule it, because you're talking about turning around and having 3 days to rest your players. You don't get to install a game plan. You don't get to practice for your opponent. You don't get to really do anything other than, get guys a day of sleep, check them out medically, see that everybody's okay. Talk about a basic game plan, throw it together as best you can. You're really going based off of what you just did the previous week. So you're not really studying the opponent, and then just fly to that other city or get enough rest so that you can play on a Thursday. So this has been a bad idea from the start, and it will get a tremendous amount of attention when it ultimately happens, those weeks.
Is it sort of a penny wise, dollar foolish kind of mentality? This league, look, business people want to make money, and people keep handing them checks. But when you get to this point, Jason, you got to make Disney happy, ABC, ESPN. You got to make NBC happy. You got to make Fox happy. Now you got to make Amazon happy. They all want the good teams, and there's only a finite amount of good teams. Nobody wants 2-3 win teams facing off late in a marquee game.
Sure, I understand.
Did they not think about that kind of stuff and say, we got the check, we'll figure it out?
No, they get the check and they figure it out. So, like this is, and I said this to a coach this week, after I had, not this week, last week, who I was having lunch with a coach. Understand that NFL teams are not businesses anymore. They're annuities. And for your listeners who don't understand the difference between annuities, okay, and businesses, okay, annuities are basically guaranteed payoffs, right? These are like buying, government issued bonds, for a gold rated bonds that get a guaranteed payoff, right? That's tax free. This is not tax free, okay, but the payoffs are guaranteed now. The amount of money they're going to be making going forward is known. And when you get that kind of investment, when teams go for $6 billion or $4.6 billion, like the Denver Broncos and the Washington Commanders have in the last two sales, those are people who are not buying those teams on spec. They're buying them knowing I'm going to be getting a check at the end of every year that is going to be averaging over a 20-year period of time, or at least over a 10-year period of time. It's going to be X amount of dollars. So now my job is to max out that annuity, right? This is a higher form of economics. It is not a risk business anymore that's just about P&Ls. It's even higher finance. So, yeah, you got to max out the amount of money, especially get on TV contracts. And now that you've got Amazon on the hook, and because your next wave of buyers, if you look down the line, it's not even going to be about networks anymore. It's going to be about the large media companies that control streaming. So you're talking about Google and Amazon. You have to prove that the product is going to be worth those people going in and buying at the kind of dollars that you've generated so far. So this is absolutely 100% about maxing out profit. It's no longer.
And speaking of $6 billion, Josh Harris, who we know well he owns the Sixers here in Philadelphia. Right. He's about to take over Washington. I got a kick. He was looking for minority owners. One of them said he wanted $100 million, and basically I was going to get good tickets. I love that quote. For $100 million, a minority owner was going to get good tickets. But at a certain point, when you get to $6 billion, Jason, not a lot of people that have that kind of money. Even if Josh Harris has got to get partners.
No, there's not. I mean, but there are enough that, look, they put up the $3 billion to be the main owner. It's not a lot different than the group sale efforts that existed 30 years ago. The difference is, though, that the profits are guaranteed. Yeah. You're going to make your money back over a period of time. You just may not have it initially, but you're going to make it back over time.
All right, Jason, want to take it back out onto the field with you again. Little evaluation of where we sit in the NFC. Who are the best three teams in the NFC as of right now? What order do you have them in? And if you got them 1, 2, 3, is the difference between 1 and 2 bigger? Or is the difference between 2 and 3 bigger? Or would you say there's more than 3 teams that you would put at the top of the NFC?
I think the difference between 1 and 2 is pretty substantial, depending on what the quarterback looks like. I mean, you've got Philly and San Francisco. Now, San Francisco depends on its defense, so you're depending on a side of the ball that is much more prone to injury. And from an offensive standpoint, they're much more dependent on injury because they need all the guys around Brock Purdy. And this is assuming Brock Purdy comes back to health for San Francisco. They need all those guys to be really functional because he's limited physically, right? I mean, he's a good distributor of the ball, right? A classic point guard. But you need all those guys around him to make him his best and make them at their best, okay? Defensively, when you're a defense-oriented team, you have to have everybody be healthy to be really good. So to me, that makes San Francisco much more precarious than the Eagles. The Eagles are a solid number 1, and then there's a step down to the 49ers. In terms of the third best team in the conference, I mean, I'd almost go like I believe that Detroit is going to make another. I'll go on a limb and say that's the team that's going to sneak up on everybody because I like the way that they play football. I like in an era when everybody plays, 3 and 4 wides a lot, try and get the ball out quickly with your quarterback. They're coming in and they're playing, tough guy football. That goes against the grain in the league and can work. And I think it can work for a short period of time while everybody else develops around the quarterback, and the wide receiver that they took last year developed. So I like Detroit, and they made a couple of moves on defense that make me happy as well. So I think they're going to be pretty good. But that's projecting a lot for the third best team in the conference. Okay. Yeah. You don't really like to project for the third best team in a conference. There's nothing much else that I really like in that
Dallas. Because Dallas had
it's the same old. I don't want to hear any more crap about it.
All right, well, the Eagles fans are going to like that. Here's what I'll say about Dallas, Jason. I'm not. A lot of people don't like Mike McCarthy. I get that.
I like Mike McCarthy. He's not the problem. The owner's the problem.
Owner's the problem. They had a big issue when their number 2 corner went down, and they get Stephon Gilmore, aging but still a good player. They get Brandon Cooks. They had issue at wide receiver 2. They get Brandon Cooks. I don't know why that kid keeps getting traded. He produces and he keeps getting traded. Not great, but
there's
solid.
A reason why.
Improvement is how I would describe it. On paper, they look pretty good. They look pretty talented, pretty good. I'm with you with Detroit. Somebody's got to win that division. I think it's going to be Detroit. Seattle maybe is a team I think is better than people think. But
quarterback's just nothing. The quarterback's just a guy.
Yeah, Gino's got to do it. They're always looking for offensive linemen. And Seattle can't find an offensive lineman to save their lives. But it looks like a bad conference. It really does.
Oh, it's a terrible conference. It's really. I mean, it's compared. There's a chasm between the two conferences. Now, I'm going to say Philadelphia matches up really well with any team that comes out of the AFC. So they would be right there at the top of the AFC listings, and but it'd be much more of a fight, and it'd be a fair fight. To me, the Eagles are like last year; they're still walking away with the conference, and they're in the number 1 seed. The only thing that's going to stop them is things that happen, like a lot of injuries, or some bad things happening along the way. But by all rights and measures, they should be the class of the conference. There's nobody else who has a real quarterback in the NFC that you really worry about. Nobody who scares you in the conference. I mean,
that's amazing.
That's part of the problem with Dallas. Yeah. Dak Prescott doesn't scare me, certainly not in clutch situations. I mean, when he's forced to have to make plays, on 3rd and 5, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, critical moments of the game, he doesn't do it. I saw him in the playoff game against San Francisco this past year. He did not step up in critical situations when he could have made a difference in that game. And they were shorthanded, don't get me wrong. But they had a chance to win that game.
Here's why I want to give you a point on Detroit and Dallas. I think it's the Eagles and San Francisco, and then the drop-off. I think they're closer than the drop-off between 2 and 3. I guess I'm more of a 49er fan this year than most. Number 1, Dallas's offensive line. They had to plug in Jason Peters last year. 147-year-old Jason Peters last year. The Dallas Cowboys 3 years ago had the best offensive line. The Eagles have lapped them, moved past them. It's not even close anymore. I think Dallas is going to have offensive line issues this year. And here's my question for you on Detroit, Jason. They gave up their 2 best running backs. Now they got one via an early draft pick. They pick up Montgomery out of free agency. He was good with the Bears last year, but I don't know that he's as good as Williams, who left from Chicago, and or Swift, who left. You like their running game? They do like to run the football. They like to play smash mouth. They are an aggressive team coached by an aggressive coach. You think they'll be just as effective running the ball this year?
Look, I think running backs are more replaceable than any other part. Okay, does that mean that it's going to be an easy transition? No, but I like the philosophy from which they're going, and the fact that they've committed to it the way they have. I mean, look, they weren't satisfied with how they ran the ball, even though they ran the ball really well last year. and they said, okay, we're going to take our philosophy, what we built on the offensive line, and we think we're going to upgrade at running back, okay, and make these moves at running back. They also think that they're going to get something, out of the wide receiver, who was a non-factor last year. And, unfortunately, because of the gambling, is going to be a non-factor for close to half the season this year.
Mm-hmm.
But they think that they're going to get a lot more out of him, which will open up some more for the running game as well, right? But from a philosophy standpoint, this is what I like about Detroit. Everybody else is playing kind of small guy football, right? Wide open, have a lot of DBs on the field. And when you do that, when the rest of the league does that, it gives you an opportunity to play better smash football. It's it's zigging when everybody else is zagging.
Yeah.
And they're really good at it. And even though they have a limited quarterback, all right, I think that's enough to make them competitive in the NFC, that if things fall right, they could maybe sneak in, and win the NFC championship, right? Critical injury here or there for another team. You want to put yourself in that position, and they put themselves in their position. Sort of like, it's not different than Baltimore. Baltimore plays a different brand of football with their quarterback, right? Lamar Jackson is an atypical quarterback because he's not a great thrower. He's an extremely great runner. So they're taking their chance that things will fall right one year. And they've gotten close a couple of times. Their problem is the rest of the AFC has gotten so much better than them that they're now sort of middle of the pack.
I also like Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Lions. He closed out a game with a tackle-eligible play to Penei Sewell on 4th down. He's a really innovative guy. That's where I wanted to go with you. I can't put the $6 billion in your account, Jason, but I want you to pretend you're an NFL owner.
I would prefer the first part of that.
I can only get half of it. I'll try to get the second half.
I'll be okay with that. Yeah.
You mentioned zigging, zagging. Jody knows this. I say it all the time. It frustrates her. How many teams run the Fangio scheme on defense? This is such. Everybody does the same thing, and to me, I want the innovator. I want the guy who's going to come up with something a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because if everybody's doing the same thing, it becomes, all right, who's the best at this one thing? I don't understand why owners and GMs don't see that. It's too much.
Whoa. How many owners understand football?
Well, yeah. All right, then we'll take it down to the GM level. We'll take it down to the GM.
Right, but those guys are afraid. It starts with the owners, okay? When owners don't really know football, okay, then the people who work for them have to justify what they do. And if they're justifying trying something that's different from everybody else, you have to have an owner who's really outside the box, willing to think about that. Otherwise, you're going to, if it doesn't work, you're going to have some real problems trying to explain it to the owner, who is ultimately the one who's making the final decision on all of this, right? So the lack of sophistication in understanding what good football is about or how football works is the initial problem. And when the owners don't understand that, and there are very few owners who understand good football. The Maras understand it, okay? The Rooneys understand it. I think Jeff Lurie understands it. He's learned it. He's spent a lot of time on it, more so than any other owner. And even he's limited in truly understanding how football works, right? When you don't understand how your product works, that makes for chaotic a chaotic game. It allows you to be convinced that flexing Thursday night games is actually a good idea. It allows you to be convinced that actually having Thursday night games is a good idea, right? So, this is where we are. We're at a time and place where football is not, the quality of the game is not that good. And I know every old guy out there says that, but the quality of the game is not that good. And this is what Dan Rooney feared years and years ago. People are living off the fact that football itself is just popular, not that the game itself that's being played is all that great.
Oh, I'm with you. Yeah. I mean,
and
aesthetically, the game isn't nearly
Yeah.
as aesthetic as it once was. The
Right.
athletes are better, but
the athletes are better. But you get back to this original point, like, why are there not innovators and people are, the Don Coryells of the world, or the Sid Gilmans of the world, or the Bill Walshes of the world? There's a lot of really smart coaches, but there's a lot of money and they don't want to take chances. Human nature is not. Yeah, no, they're not going to risk much in this situation.
Because the gravy train is paying off big time. Don't necessarily rock that financial boat. All right, Jason, last one for me. And I just was mentioning to John that this offseason for the Eagles is boring. Boring is good. Boring's boring, but it's very good. The Eagles have no drama. There are no issue makers in the locker room. They had the Kumbaya 100 minutes that John could watch in practice this year. So all is good in Philadelphia. No rocking the boat. Let me ask about two teams who both could be rocked. The reason why the Eagles, more than anything else, are having a boring offseason is they got the Jalen Hurts contract done. And it was put to bed, and it was everybody on the same page, and great news, and blah, blah, blah. You got two other big-time quarterbacks who didn't get their deal done, Burrow and Herbert. Are those two teams looking at drama and chaos when the preseason, when they report for camp? Now the guys are worried about getting hurt. They want to be put away and put in bubble. You don't want to give my contract extension, or he put me in bubble rack. And what do you mean the guy's not practicing during the spring? Are the Bengals and the Chargers in for some drama because they haven't gotten the quarterback deal done like the Eagles did?
Have you looked at the history of the Bengals and the Chargers doing big contracts?
Yeah.
Yes, that's one of the reasons why I'm asking that question to you, Jason.
The fist is very tight at those two places, right?
Yeah.
Now, they're going to pay quarterbacks. They're going to get it done with these guys. But it's going to be uncomfortable for them because they're teams that don't like to be way out there in terms of paying players. Okay, it makes them very, very uncomfortable, and those two contracts are going to reset the market once again for quarterbacks. And the other question is, which one goes first?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because whoever goes first is the other one's going to pass it in all likelihood, or is at least going to set where the market is for the second one, right?
Yep.
So it becomes really, really important who goes first, because Burrow's either going to pass Herbert. If Herbert goes first, Burrow's going to pass him, and if Burrow sets the market way out there, Herbert's going to be right next to it, right? Like, and so there's a little bit of strategy to how that plays out, and that makes not just the teams themselves who are penurious, to make it polite, to use a polite word for being cheap. So two penurious teams historically are also impacted by the agents trying to calculate where are they going to be here on these deals. Now, the Hurts deal fortunately got done early because the kid's still under contract for a longer period of time, and they can still franchise him, at a relatively decent rate. So there were some incentives to get the Hurts deal done earlier that worked, right?
Yeah.
Herbert,
he was the highest paid player in the history of football for 4 days, Jason. 4 days.
But he got a deal that was pretty well set, and was based on where the Lamar Jackson deal, where those numbers really were, even though they were not real in the real world, they were pretty well known behind the
And then Lamar got done. So now we got to wait for drama in Los Angeles and also in Cincinnati. Should be fun. And I didn't think we were going to get the use of the word penurious on today's show. Gotta thank you very much for that.
when you're a big time author, you got to do stuff like that.
Exactly right. All right, big time author. What do you got to promote? You got a book coming out. What are you doing?
A book came out last month with Tom Brady Sr. Helping me write the foreword to it. It is called "Shut Up, Your Kid's Not That Good." It's basically a brief advice book to parents. Grandparents should pick it up and give it to their kids.
Nice.
And how to avoid being the sideline parent who's a real pain in the ass.
Yeah, you had me at shut up, Jason.
Exactly. Shut up. Your kid's not that good. It's a lot of great stories from parents who are helicopter parents who got in the way of their kids being great, and really, or sapped the energy out of their kids. It's an easy read. It's a fun read. It's a sarcastic read because that's who I am. But Tom Brady Sr. helped me out with, a story he related on how he raised his kids, and all 4 of his children ended up being terrific athletes, and obviously his son, the greatest quarterback of all time. So his way of kind of staying out of the way of his kid in his own way. While he did coach, I mean, I'm not going to say that he didn't take part in raising all of his kids as athletes. He did that, but he had a polite way of staying out of the way of other coaches and other situations.
2 things people will be Googling as soon as we finish up here.
Penurious.
Get it on Amazon. Look up Penurious.
Yes. Exactly right. And shut up, your kids. Not that good. I love them both.
Not that great.
Always.
Not that great. Not that
not
great.
That
Shut
great.
Up,
Excuse me.
Not that great. There you go.
Get the title right. Not that great. Well, you were great with us today, and we thank you for doing so. Jason, always a pleasure, bud. We'll get you on again before the season gets underway.
Absolutely. Take care, guys. Good luck.
Jason Cole, NFL author and Hall of Fame.
Also
voter.
had a red hot chili pepper shirt on, I believe.
Was that what it was? I couldn't make it out.
Yeah.
But he, as he said, we're all in the dark. I'm in a little blue. You saying you're maroon?
I'm maroon.
Is that maroon today?
Yeah.
You look your usual black self there, Johnny Cash. But
No.
I got a dark blue. But I got to go dark, hanging out down at Ocean. All right, we're hanging out for only a couple minutes more. Come back. Time to put a bow on the show.